welcome to the Quiet Riot, where we talk film, television, and media with an emphasis on old movies and nostalgic favorites. I'm Ainsley, and in today's video we are discussing The Thin Man Goes Home, the fifth film in the Thin Man series. This one is the first to not be directed by W.S. Van Dyke, who unfortunately passed away in 1943. The film was released in 1945 and sees both Myrna Loy and William Powell returning to their roles. They don't have a young Nicky Jr. with them, but don't worry, they do have Asta with them. In this one, Nick and Nora decide to travel to his hometown where he can meet his mother and father. It appears as if Nick does not have the greatest relationship with his father, and there's a lot of tension between them, and a big part of that is due to Nick's drinking and probably just his more ways, I guess, is the best way to put it. When they get there, it is a surprise, and the mother is very excited. The dad, not quite as much. His dad is a doctor, and I pictured something a little bit more working class for him, but they are at least middle class, as doctors at the time weren't necessarily as wealthy or couldn't get as wealthy as a lot of them can nowadays, depending of course on what they do and their livelihoods before going through medical school and all of that jazz. And his father's profession does play a pretty big role in the story, or at least plays some part in the things that occur within the story. Now, I have to say, this is not really what I expected. There were certain aspects of this story that just wasn't it for me. There was definitely certain parts that were pretty enjoyable, and a big part of that is of course the chemistry between these two characters. Nick and Nora Charles are just this fun, loving couple, and even though they have gotten older over the course of this series, they still have a certain amount of youthful vigor, shall we say. And I love the relationship between this couple and their dog Asta. He is very much like a son to them and a very important part of not only their family but this series as well, so it's good to see that he has made it all the way through. Nicky Jr. is away at boarding school for this, so they got rid of the kid so they could go home, and it's just the adults and Nick in his hometown with his wife and his family. And of course, hijinks ensue. Murders are killers kill and victims are murdered, as is the course throughout these movies. And Nick, of course, gets dragged into it all. A lot of the tone that existed throughout the first four films is no longer there, and I think a big part of that is just when you have a consistent team, or at least the majority of the people involved in the film is the same, then you have a great deal of consistency. And within this movie, a lot of that was lost. So things were definitely a lot more corny and cheesy, and that can of course come into play when you're dealing with family, when people are going back, and that's something we've seen in a lot of other series, both television and film as well, and sometimes that does a really big disservice to the characters and the overall story. The Thin Man Goes Home was directed by Richard Thorpe, from a screenplay by Robert Riskin and Dwight Taylor, from a story by Riskin and Harry Kearns. The film was produced by Everett Riskin, brother to Robert Riskin, and starred a returning William Powell and Myrna Loy with Lucille Watson. Carl Freund was the cinematographer, and the film was edited by Ralph E. Winters with music by David Snell. David Snell returned from his work on Shadow of the Thin Man. The film was once again produced by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and distributed by Loews Inc. The film was released on January 25th, 1945 in the US and ran for 100 minutes. The budget was $1.401 million and made a box office of $2.814 million. Production of a Thin Man film had been planned for 1942, but Myrna Loy refused the role because her attention was focused on her recent marriage to John D. Hertz Jr. and her work for the Red Cross. Fans received the suggestion that Irene Dunne might take over the role of Nora with horror. While Irene Dunne was a popular actress at the time and a really great actress as well, Myrna Loy embodied Nora, and there wouldn't be a good Thin Man if we were to either get another Nick, another Nora, or another couple altogether. By this time, William Pell and Myrna Loy were Nick and Nora. TCM's Roger Fristow quotes Powell, recalling later, "The fans wanted Myrna, and they didn't want anyone else. And I wanted Myrna too. Besides, the favorable reception our pictures always received. I must say it was certainly a pleasure to work with her." Powell remembered the spectacular welcome Loy received on her first day back to a set, thronged with well-wishers. "I've never seen a girl so popular with so many people. Everybody from wardrobe was over the set, everybody from makeup, everybody from property, everybody miles around, it looked like." And The Thin Man Goes Home was Loy's only wartime picture. So during the majority of the war, Myrna Loy was working with the Red Cross or focusing on her marriage with her husband. The cocktail shaker, a staple prop from previous films in the series, seems to be omnipresent in this one, replaced by a running gag about how difficult it is to get a drink in Nick's hometown. Nick's faithful flask contains only cider. TCM's notes on the film say that according to an April 1944 Hollywood Reporter news item, wartime liquor rationing prompted producer Everett Riskin to eliminate the heavy drinking that had been an integral part of Nick and Nora's daily life in previous Thin Man films. While I completely understand their reasoning for doing this, and the fact that the rationing of wort liquor during the wartime was a big part of what was going on in the US, I also find that having the shaker and just an alcohol glass in his hand and a drink in his hand, and having him drink fairly regularly throughout the series up until this point really took something away from his character, and it was nice that they didn't get rid of it altogether with him still making mentions of it and other characters making mentions of his drinking. And it was a bit of a funny gag to have him drinking only non-alcoholic cider in this, but it just, you could feel that it was missing, and it felt as if a really big component and character that existed in this world was not really present during this one. And it's really weird to say that because a martini shaker and really any form of alcohol doesn't have to be such a big component, but I just think the character of Nick Charles was known for being a heavy drinker, and a lot of the jokes surrounded his drinking and drinking in general, so it was just really odd to see that not be a part of this, and it seemed to take something away from it. When it comes to The Thin Man Goes Home, I don't think that it's this horrible film that's completely unwatchable, and to be honest, I definitely thought this film was going to be a lot worse and generally just less enjoyable than it ended up being. While I did find it corny and cheesy, I still found it funny. And while there was a different energy and the overall tone that existed in the previous four films wasn't there, the many people involved were talents who worked on many other amazing films. So they definitely had something to bring to the table here. I'm glad they didn't get another Nora Charles. That just wouldn't have worked, and this movie would have been nowhere near as successful as it ended up being. I'm also glad that they didn't have Nick Jr. in this one. He does appear in the next film, but I think it worked. It worked not to have him around. I think him being at his grandparents' house, they would have had to figure out ways to make him a bigger part of it. So for this, it just seemed like something new that, or it just seemed like something they could pull away from for this movie. The Thin Man Goes Home is a change for Nick and Nora Charles as they exit their life in the big city to go to Nick's hometown. This, of course, changes things for the couple as Nora feels a bit out of place and Nick has definitely changed since his last time there. It seems as if his relationship with his parents has been a bit strained, particularly that between his father, and that has caused him not to visit very much, and his parents haven't came to the city to visit him as well. They're more small town folk or small city folk, and he's more of a city guy. Was in San Francisco and then was in New York. Nora is really proud of him and she tries to get his dad to understand that his job is something that he really loved, and since then he's been taking on a lot of other cases. I love to see that Nora and Nick have this wonderful, loving relationship, and as I said before, there's a lot of youthful vigor still there, and that's a great thing to see, and it's not just all about being in your 20s and in love, or you're in your early 30s and in love. This is about a couple who has been together for a really long time, and who love each other and stand up for each other. It seems as though Nick's father may not like the fact that he took a different career path, which is a big part of film and television when kids decide to go do something else. Of course, the medical profession is something you can have a great success in, but Nick has also had a lot of incredible success. There's also the possibility that he doesn't like that Nick doesn't really have much of a job. He has a socialite wife and they're able to pay for things due to the money that she has. But of course he still lives a very active life, but his father tends to ignore that. Familial relationships and going home are two of the big themes that are here, and that connects with the mystery itself. While I do have my problems with a lot of the tone and some of the energy that is in this movie, I do like the ending as it seems to tie things together very well and connects it with the previous installments. I liked this movie, but I didn't love it near as much as I do the previous ones. I would like to know your thoughts in the comments below if you have watched it. Unfortunately, this one isn't available on HBO Max like the first four films, but if you have seen it, I would love to know what you think. This has been a spoiler-free review, and if you want to see the last review, come back tomorrow to the channel. I got a little mixed up in my scheduling and what I had done, so I actually filmed these out of order. So this one is coming out today, and my review for The Song of the Thin Man comes out tomorrow, and that is also a ranking video for all 6 films. I would love to see you there. Again, if you have any thoughts on the film having seen it, or any thoughts on the Thin Man franchise as a whole, please let me know. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments of what you'd like to see from this channel as well. If you enjoy me and want to see more of me, hit subscribe and ring that bell to be notified every single time I post. I discuss old movies, mysteries, nostalgic favorites, media, and things that just tickle my fancy. I'd love to hear from you and I'd love to have you here. See you next time. Bye.